Hear me? Fantastic. I'm going to start with a little disclaimer. So it says Starbreeze on the program, and that's totally fine, but just to make things clear, I'm not representing Starbreeze today, I'm only representing myself. Another reason for this is that I'm like between jobs at the moment. I'm doing my last day at Starbreeze on Thursday, and I'm starting a new position at Toca Boca in January. Yeah. So, and also just so you know, that's the reason. It has nothing to do with the stuff that's going on in the newspapers around Starbreeze at the moment. Good. Whoa. So, hi, I'm Simon. I've been a gameplay programmer at Starbreeze for almost 2 years at this point. Did we? No, it's supposed to be like this, right? Oh, wait, let's do this actually. Let's do this. Yeah, there we go. At Starbreeze, I work with a title called Payday 2, which is a cooperative heisting game that was released in 2013. And we recently finished off the narrative arc of Payday 2. And working with that has been an exciting ride. And despite some overtime and general frustrations, I'm very glad I've been a part of it. My career, though, began in web development. Actually, I've dropped out of the mathematics program twice, and I've dropped out of system science once. But that was not before I learned the basics of programming there. And I got hooked, and I started coding constantly. But you know, when you drop out, there's this issue with CSN. So when my CSN got cut off because I didn't pass my courses, I was lucky enough to get a job at a web studio. So I began my career building Flash banners back when that was still a thing. So this was a while ago. But I grew to love programming. And of course, I also loved games. And ever since I had my first adventures in The Legend of Zelda for the NES, I wanted to make my own games. My mother was not very fond of my hobby, and she often wondered when I would grow out of it. She would ask me, how long will you go on playing games? And she would say, think of what your future partner will say. And just for the record, she's totally okay with it. But I started to think of games as like a kid thing, totally unrelated to adult things like jobs. And I basically didn't consider it a real job. But I still never grew out of it. And after almost 3 years of building Flash banners and ad sites, while constantly fiddling with game prototypes on the side, I realized that maybe it could be a job, and I felt I had to give it a shot. Because I'm at my best when I'm passionate about what I do, and I think everyone is. So I applied to Gotland University, and finally made it through an education when I graduated from Uppsala University in 2015. And since graduation, I've been a part-time shop assistant in Kjell & Company, and a front-end web developer for a newspaper platform in Sundsvall before I ended up in the actual games industry at Starbreeze. So it's been a long and winding path up to this point. Right. So let's talk about character creation. It's not only for games, I would say. I believe that we are able to make an active effort in real life as well to influence how we grow. And it's something I think about a lot. And if I can, I'd like to share some of what I've learned from the various perspectives I've had the opportunity to experience in the shape of some skills that you might consider putting some extra experience in. So you see, this is my neat skill tree that I made. It's totally not scientific. So yeah, don't read too much into it. So this is like the courage subtree, symbolized by the heart. And the first skill to bring into life after uni is a vision, I would say. And a vision to me is sort of like a sufficiently diffuse answer to the ever important question of why. Like, why am I doing whatever it is I do? And who do I want to be? This is what drives character creation, I feel. I'm still young enough to remember some of my teenage years. And where times were toughest, I managed to push through because I knew that one day in the future I would be perfectly relaxed, enjoying a cozy Friday night, right, with my future family in the warm glow of a CRT television. Because, you know, flat screens hadn't taken over yet. So, and I also own a CRT television today because I'm a retro gaming enthusiast. But the specifics of this vision changed from time to time. However, the key components tend to remain. A feeling of warmth, of safety, and belonging. So my step toward game development was indeed driven by that vision. I needed to work from passion in order to get positive energy from my work that I could bring back to other parts of life. I also lean back on my vision in an effort to keep work and life balanced, which is not always easy in this business. Asking yourself, why am I doing this, when facing crunch time can be quite sobering. I encourage you to ask yourselves that question, why? Or who do I want to be? And try to answer it more from a place of how do I want to feel than who do I want to be in the eyes of others. Now, your answers might differ from mine, and that's perfectly fine since they're yours. Just try to make them honest and make them for you. And then hold on to the question rather than the answers you give it. This is important to me. Revisit that question and reevaluate your answers from time to time. Inquisitiveness means being prone to ask questions. At least that's what I made up. So on the subject of asking questions, never stop doing that. Because the university is not a place you come to get all the answers. Rather, it's where you learn how to ask questions. And know this, when you graduate, you will not be a fully formed game developer. Your learning will just have begun. And asking questions is the key to learning. But this is easier said than done. And after my graduation, my first programming job was as a web developer at Mittmedia in Sundsvall, where I was working on a web platform for local newspapers. So during my first few weeks there, I felt like I was expected to live up to some image of this awarded game developer hotshot. And I got a severe case of imposter syndrome. Is there anyone, by the way, who is not familiar with that expression? Right. So this led to a feeling of hesitation whenever I needed to ask for help, which happens a lot, I would say. I felt afraid of being exposed as a fraud from the expert programmer that I wanted to be. And I realized that I had to do something to counter it so that I would be able to learn and grow from my new talented colleagues. So at the next stand-up, I told the team how I felt. And this was a very new field for me, with a much larger and complex platform than I was used to working with. And I told them I would need a lot of support, and I would need to nag them and ask them lots of questions, including very stupid ones. And doing this was a huge relief, because after that, I dared to be junior and ask questions, so that I could in fact keep growing as a developer. Adaptability. When I was studying here, I really tried to put my best foot forward and make an impression. I was a class representative at faculty meetings. I acted as student representative at Tokyo Game Show. I even joined a delegation to Tallinn for an exhibition on the Swedish exports. At least I think that's what it was. It was kind of weird. I did this in part for the learning experience, but I also had high hopes that it would give an edge when the time would come to go job hunting. But after graduation, when I started sending lots and lots of applications out, I was frustrated to find that I got very few replies. And the replies that I got were exclusively rejections in the style of, like, thanks for applying, but for this position we're looking for someone senior with more experience. So once again, money started running out. So I went to Arbetsförmedlingen. Does anyone know what that is in English? It's the place you go to get help finding a job, basically. Right. So I went to Arbetsförmedlingen, and I got a part-time job as a shop assistant. 20%. But I still kept applying to game jobs. And a few months later, a recruiter reached out to me, and it turned out they found me through Arbetsförmedlingen. And they pitched me a web job in Sundsvall. Sundsvall is like in the middle of Sweden. So for most of the population, that's way up north. It was not the game development job I had in mind, but the salary was good, and it was a development job rather than the shop gig I had there. So it would be a good thing for avoiding my programming skills like going stale. So I leaned back on my vision and I asked myself, like, why would I do this? And I found that I believed it would take me closer to that vision of safety, warmth, and comfort. I didn't close the door on game development at that point, but I was indeed prepared to basically take this direction for the rest of my life. It didn't turn out like that, but the year I spent in Sundsvall was actually one of the best I've had professionally. So I suggest you'll be open to a change in direction. And changing direction is not a failure, and it's not giving up on your dreams. Lean back on your vision, be agile, adapt and learn from the new perspectives you might gain. A diverse experience can give you the edge with perspectives that others might lack. And, well, I mentioned I dropped off 3 university educations before coming here. That to me is also a change in direction. So don't fear going in a different direction if the path you're at is not working for you. That is not necessarily a bad thing. But it turned out that my initial optimism for getting a job in the games industry were a bit off. And that was with 3 years of working experience in web development behind me. It wasn't on the first slide, but yeah. And there are people who come to this education who have never written a line of code, or ever drawn a line of art before they arrived here at this island, more or less. And I truly, I feel for you guys, and your path might not be straight, but I truly believe that you can reach your vision, just maybe not necessarily in the way that you imagine. Which brings us to this. My opportunity opened up when I came back to the island for an engagement party. I met a friend from school there, and he had heard from a common acquaintance that Starbreeze were looking for developers, and he put us in touch. So I sent an application and referred to my connection, and that led to a phone interview, which led to a work sample and then an on-site interview. And come the interview, it turned out that I'd met the lead programmer for the Payday 2 team at the Swedish Game Awards in 2013, where we competed against each other in the best innovation category, and my team won. So well, they hired me, and I joined the Payday 2 team. So like that worked out all right for me, you know, which I guess is more than you can say for the engagement that the party was for. But connections still have been super important to me, not only in this instance, but for Toca Boca as well, actually. And I wouldn't be where I am today without them. So I've also been to, you know, various expos, conferences, game jams, and the like, and I've collected countless business cards that have been gathering dust in my wallet. And, you know, you don't need to put too much effort in that. Because to me, the truly valuable connections are stronger and deeper. They are your friends, your classmates, and your mentors. They are the ones who get a feel for your talents and your interests, your ambitions, your strengths, needs, and weaknesses, just as you do for them. Now, evidently, business card networking is not entirely useless given my stroke of luck with the Payday 2 lead programmer, but it's not something you can plan. So don't spend too much emotional effort on it. A friendly handshake and a quick chat is enough, I would say. You don't have to feel like you need to impress everyone. Instead, save the emotional investment for the ones you work with, and sweat with, and bleed, and cry, and laugh. Having a handful of strong, mutually rewarding connections is invaluable. Networking and socializing is a way of creating opportunities for these connections to be made. But it is what they grow into that is valuable. So on the subject of teamwork, being able to connect is crucial for teamwork. You work in teams a lot during your time here, so that gives you plenty of opportunity to practice this. Try working with different people rather than falling back on the same team for every project. Challenge yourself and your ability to connect with a wide variety of people. And the next time you do a team project, take a moment to get to know each other from within the context of the project. Sit down and let every team member share their hopes, their ambitions, and inspirations for the project. Such an exercise helps gauge and induce commitment, I think, helping you to counter a common problem where some member of the team is not showing up or maybe not doing their part. It's common to feel like that. If you find yourself as a team leader, or a producer, or like leading the team basically in some way. Understand that you have a responsibility to ensure that each human resource in the team is utilized and challenged to the furthest extent possible for them. And as a team, you're all collectively responsible to create this dynamic and to uphold it. And I'm gonna go into a side note here, right? Wait, side note. See? This is my, come on. This is my recipe for dealing with a no-show, because this happened a lot while I was here. And it wasn't always handled in the best way, I feel. So if you feel like you're having this problem, I suggest you make it perfectly clear what is required to be part of the team. And you give your teammate a chance to remedy this. You don't go like to the teachers right away and say like, we need to get this person out of the team or whatever. Inform them that you feel that, like, there is an issue, but focus on you and focus on your own learning experience. That is what matters. The only one that suffers from someone not participating is the one who does not participate. So when you've made the effort to make it work first, trying to utilize and challenge this person, then sure, go ahead. So back on track. I suggest you try to create good conditions for connections to occur. Like, try to make opportunities for conversation and try to normalize conversation. This is something I've recently had to struggle with a bit. My first day on Payday 2, I got into the office and they showed me to my chair, like, here you go, welcome, sit down, thank you. And here's your bug tracking system. All right, good luck. And I'm there like going, oh. I'm looking to my colleagues to the sides of me, and they're all focused like this, sort of blindfolded, not like avoiding eye contact and everything. And during my time at Payday 2, at Starbreeze, I've found that it was crucial to me to start beating at that ice, try to normalize conversation, because it gets in the way of the creative process that you can have together. So, whether it be studying together, going for like an evening at Rindy, or collectively having an ice cream every Wednesday during the most stressful parts of your big game projects, maybe, try to create opportunity. So back when I was studying system science, I took a course in group psychology. And this included a bunch of workshops in team dynamics and interview technique. Basically, it's about how you have a meaningful conversation, kind of. And it turns out that the key is listening. And it takes a lot of practice. This was one of the most valuable experiences to my career that I've ever had, actually. And if anything I mentioned today should be in the curriculum, I would say it's this. So hint, Wulf. Exactly. But initiating conversation and seeking connections is easier said than done for a lot of people. Because it means you make yourself vulnerable, sort of. And this can be very scary. And to you, I would like to say this. half my life ago, approximately, on the first day of high school, I didn't know anybody, and I was standing around like in a corner trying to act cool as you do, really being just very scared. But after we had as an official introduction, and we were walking down these flights of stairs, and your classmate called out to me suddenly and said, "Hey, you're Simon, right?" But in Swedish, of course. And I hesitantly replied like, "Yeah," because what does this person want? So she put her hand out, just like that, and she said, "Hello, I'm Matilda, it's nice to meet you." And my mind was blown, because it made me feel so invited and happy. And I thought, is this how easy it is to make people feel like that? And this has stuck with me. This is honestly a very small moment that had a huge impact on my life. So I suggest you try it. Just start with a handshake and a smile, and the rest will follow. My path toward my vision of who and where I want to be has not been straight. The winding path has given me several different perspectives and experiences. I've tried being open to adapt and try new directions, and I believe this has made invaluable additions to my skill set. Trying to have the courage to open up and connect with my colleagues has helped me learn and grow, and I try to be a positive influence on the dynamics of any team I'm part of by trying to create opportunities for connection. I'm determined to never stop asking questions, to never stop learning, and never stop building my character. And I wish that you will find that yourself as well. So, thank you for listening to my pretentious ramblings. And if there are any questions, there is plenty of time. I also have candy. Wulf has given me candy. Right?
Hey, first of all, welcome. My question is that you said you dropped out of 3 different colleges.
Yeah.
And I'm
kind of the same college, actually.
Oh, all right. I'm kind of in the same situation. I dropped off 2 of them. This is my third run because I thought the first 2 were not right for me. And I want to ask you this question. Was the age a problem when you were trying to look for a job? Because I know we are expected to go to college right after high school and within 3-4 years get the bachelor degree and then look for a job.
Right.
And I just want to ask that, was it a problem at all?
No, I wouldn't say so. You mean like you're kind of asking, would they expect you to be more experienced at your age? Yeah. I guess at some point that will become a factor. I'm 32 this Christmas. I usually look younger, but the mustache helps. And oh, I'm losing my track here. Now, to me, it was more of the interview process, like just showing that I am someone to count on, giving an awesome work sample, stuff like that. I mean, as I said, I had 3 years of web development before I got here. So it's not like that time is the time I spent before coming here and taking my bachelor is useless or wasted. Even the time I spent in university educations that I dropped out of. Like it's not like you're doing a university program and then you graduate and suddenly everything appears in your head. You're learning along the way, right? And that is what is ultimately the most important to you. A degree has merit, but the degree in itself doesn't make you better. It's only what you put into it, right? Or do you want a chocolate Santa? No? Because, right.
Thanks for the talk. I'm wondering, because you mentioned conversation at workspace. And to me, there's a big difference from talking while working and having actual conversation about the game and like a conversation that is healthy for the company or for the production quality, I would almost say.
Right.
There's a difference to that and just talking and goofing around. And I'm wondering how you kind of go, how your way of good conversation is.
Right. Good point. Good question. I mean, hopefully, you're interested enough in your work so that a conversation about your work will be a good, interesting conversation, right? This was also in the group psychology course, actually. It was fantastic. Having, like, goofing off has some value, but it can definitely, and very early, become too much. That is something you learn with experience, I would say, like how to like flow with it when it's valuable, how to cut it off when it's not. But yeah, I think the key is to find, because when I mention conversation, I'm not exclusively talking about like goofing off conversation. Even though that can help to make the connections necessary, like to connect to your teammates in a way that is necessary for the actual productive conversations to flow smoothly. So that's the use of goofing off. But yeah, don't overdo it.
Thank you.
We have someone here, I think. Lollipop girl.
Hi.
Oh, right. We'll do you next then.
Oh, I'm sorry. Great talk.
Not your fault. Thank you.
I was wondering when you leave this education and you have a portfolio with all of your schoolwork, how do you present it like to people?
Good question. Are you a programmer?
I am something.
Right. I like that answer. So for me, being a programmer, I always looked at my artist classmates with envy, because like, how straightforward is it from my perspective? Don't kill me, artists. I thought it would be like super straightforward to make an artist's portfolio, but as a programmer, what do I show? Like, code is not very exciting to, well, I think it's very exciting to look at, but not visually necessarily. So I tried to, shall we look at let's have a look, shall we? I just basically tried to list like some of the more notable things that I did, and projects that I really liked, that I thought turned out well. Primarily, it's two things. It's the King of the Thrill project that we won the Innovation Award with, because that, like, looks good in a CV, right? And also a prototype that I made for advanced game design, because, oh crap, I don't have Wi-Fi. I'll show you my website later. And also a prototype I made for advanced game design 2, I think it was, which was about, we did it with Jacob, fantastic course. Like toy first design, right? So yeah, just list your favorite projects, videos, stuff that catches someone's eye. The code, you can't show that. So that's the next step. But, yeah, right, sure. What else? Also, but try to tell anyone that will be reading a little bit about yourself, about what makes you an interesting and I mean, pleasant individual or whatever. I wrote, I have this, all right, so we have internet now, do we? Let's try this. You'll see all my tabs, or not.
While you're doing that, can I ask
Ask away. Sure.
as a student, you were engaged in a lot of extracurricular activities.
Sure.
One of them kind of landed you a job. You were at a competition, Swedish Game Awards, something. I think that was a student project, right?
Maybe. I mean, that's part of it. Yeah, sure.
But you were there. And it was during your school years. You did that thing.
Yeah.
But you also did a ton of extra stuff. Or I don't know if it was Rindy or you were in the student union in some way. Or
I was in the musical, actually.
there you go. I guess my question is, do you feel like was that valuable? Like, would you recommend students in general to engage in extra stuff, or was there stuff that you would choose not to do?
Good question. It's on a case-by-case basis, of course. For me, during my dropout years, I did a lot of like student social activities. Many of them involved lots of alcohol, and I grew super tired of that at like 24 or something. So when I got here, and I think it did get in the way of my education back then. When I got here, I wanted to focus on learning, on doing it right or whatever. It didn't really hold, because I couldn't help joining the student musical, and that was fun and all. But I mean, you have to balance it, right? But find what works for you, because doing this, like joining Rindy or whatever, can be a great thing for you. There were people in the same student social activity groups that I was a part of in Lund, who, like, to them that meant a fantastic learning experience, that it gave them management skills and like organizational skills that really helped them, I think, get to great places. But yeah, for me, it didn't work. So you see here, I was working on like doing this whole neat text, and then I was like, I can't do this, because I have a little bit of performance anxiety sometimes. And so I just did a bullet list. So I'm a programmer, I have this bachelor thing, experience from web development, I have a passion for games, and I'm a tango enthusiast, right? Like, something exciting. Well, Swedish. So this is my website. So now, next question. this over here. You'll have to raise your arm higher, I think.
Talking about communicate with your teammate. I really appreciate your trying to engage with others since you're new to the group. And as a project manager, it's like quite hard to talking something in your mind, like we don't know a lot. At least, like if someone don't have programming or art experience, it's very hard to communicate with other teammates like in their minor. So it's like we can only talking about shit together. So
Right. I think you're saying that like if you're managing a project with programmers and you don't have your own programming experience, how do you really get to the point of like pushing them, challenging them, making sure that they are utilized in a good way? Is that what you're asking?
Also, it's quite hard. You don't know how long it will take to like make some programming things. I don't want to be too harsh.
Right. Yeah, that's difficult. I mean, because the sense of being harsh that you mentioned, yeah, you'll have to find that trusting connection, I'm afraid, where you trust each other enough to give criticism or critique. Yeah, critique rather than criticism, I think. Because trust will allow you to receive that critique as well. Because when you all know that it's all for the good of the project or the good for like the good of that person's development or whatever, then it doesn't have to become like a fight or a conflict or whatnot. This is something that can, I mean, among programmers, there's like sometimes this sense of elitism, which I think comes from, sort of the imposter syndrome thing. You want to be the very best and solve all the bugs before anyone else does or whatever. There can be a lot of competition. And sometimes that leads to difficulties in sitting down and like talking about each other's solutions or each other's code and stuff. Like maybe someone won't accept the suggestions you're giving. They will feel threatened or whatever. And like if you're in that situation, there's something else, something more fundamental that needs to change, I think, in order to create an environment where that discussion can happen and can flow. Did I sort of answer what you were asking?
I sort of find out how to solve that solution. Thank you.
Right. We can talk later more if you want.
Yes.
Right.
Well, in this case, I do have a question for you, Simon.
Sure.
If I understand it correctly, you worked as a game programmer at Starbreeze, right?
Yeah, until Thursday.
Yeah, right. As a game programmer, besides knowing, of course, the engine that you're working on and the programming language of said engine, which I assume is probably something like C++ in your case?
Lua.
Yeah. What other skills besides these two specific once have been useful in your job? So that besides knowing Lua and your game engine,
I mean,
what do you recommend us to look into or get an understanding of?
yeah, well, that's kind of what I hope to convey with my talk. But yeah, like working on soft skills, on skills that that you won't like, because you can go to university and you can learn how to program. You won't learn it all at first, but you can get started and get in, like, out into the working field and start growing to a fantastic programmer. So that's kind of, you got that down, right? So the other stuff is more of the soft things, I think. Being able to work in a team, that's crucial.
Yes, I mean, I understand the soft skills side that you presented. I'm referring to hard skills that specifically helped you in the tasks that you were assigned to do in your job. So we're like leaving the people component aside for it.
Right. Like outside of, because, okay, so let's say this then. If you talk about programming, what do you mean? Do you mean only the like art or the act of typing keys to make code do stuff? Then that's like, if we compartmentalize that, then there's this whole other field around it, which it would include like systems design, and I mean, you will briefly touch on different technical design patterns and stuff during your education, and what you will learn will not necessarily be all good for you. You might need to unlearn how to use those patterns, where to use them when, and it's a very small subset of what there is to learn about how you put systems together to solve complex problems, right? So that's the thing I would say. Does that answer your question in any way?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Sweet. So if there is nothing else... Oh.
Okay, so my question is, you worked in a pretty big studio, right?
Yeah, I was.
How many people were there?
So at Starbreeze in the Stockholm office, 200 maybe.
Okay, so not too huge.
No, right. Not like EA sites or whatever.
Yeah. Okay, so
there were other offices as well, but yeah, sure, go ahead.
Starbreeze, I saw some job recruitment things, but how hard is it actually to get recruited just by posting, like, you don't know anyone in Starbreeze, and you want to get a job. Is it even possible to submit your portfolio, I'm talking as an artist, and get a job, or is it basically the guy who knew a guy who knew you and you get hired? So does it happen that you submit your job application and you get hired?
Yes, of course it does happen.
Okay.
But you need, like, it's good to have some luck if you're gonna do that, because they're so yeah, it does happen, but having a connection, having a guy who knows a guy who knows a gal who knows a dog, it's not fair, but that kind of lets you bypass or go, like, come closer to that goal of getting into wherever.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. And were there interns at the studio, or like, is there a high chance of an intern getting hired?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And like, I don't know, if you want to get an internship in Stockholm, be a student at Future Games or whatever. Like, they will mostly find interns from the local educations, I think. But you can do it, I would say. Like, if you want an internship somewhere, reach out to them, show them your stuff, your portfolio, of course, and just nag them, basically.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So thanks. There are chocolate Santas for everyone here.
Thank you very much.